Guys, what's up? I'm back in the Western Hemisphere, up north in Canada. I met the interviewees on Instagram, Poc Architecture. It's two people, Janelle and Ethan, and we talked about colleges mostly. They're both college students. Well, one graduated recently and the other will graduate soon enough. I was kind of curious as to how Canadian architects get registered, their education, so we touched upon that a little bit. We talked about the pandemic and as to why they started Poc Architecture. So basically it's just to answer the question of where are all the Poc architects in Canada? An excellent question, and was surprised that there was no record of them. And even when I went overseas in Great Britain, there was no record of the first Black woman architect. It led me to appreciate what we have in the US and the initiatives that Black architects took to secure our place in history. To that testament also, how is racism handled in other countries? Prompted me to think about the systemic and deep-rooted racism in this country and compare that to others. Now, we didn't get in too deep about systemic racism in Canada. And when I talk to people who went to school in London, it's more of an international thing. But in London, you have migrants that come and they can trace back like, oh, well, my father is from Nigeria or my parents are from India. They could trace back to where they're from. And here we kind of have a problem with that. If you haven't purposely migrated into the US, then you were forced here. I don't really know how it is in Canada. Personally, I have relatives who live in Montreal, and I believe Janelle mentioned that she had family members in the Caribbean. We didn't get in too deep with that. But I'm curious as to how the history of Black people in Canada are, and who was the first Black woman who got licensed in Canada? Who was the first Black man got licensed in Canada? I'm curious. Another thing we talked about, which is very important, is the affordability of college and how architecture students pay more than the average student. I feel like it goes beyond just supplies. If you are an art major, you have supplies, right? But in some schools, the tuition is just higher. Like I know the first school I went to, the architecture school in itself was higher than the regular tuition in the school. And then also we have to deal with software, licenses for that software. We have to have laptops for that software. And during a pandemic, you don't have those resources. You don't have that lab to go to. You don't have access to that printer or that model shop to really express yourself as a student. So where's the money going? And that's one. And second of all is being an international student. And this is beyond just Black. It's what is the university doing to help you with that? So we talked about those types of things in this episode, short, brief episode. And I hope to have further conversations with our allies up north. I feel like I need to have conversations with the associations, like the Royal Institute of fill in the blank, whether it be Canada or the RIBA, and ask them, what are you doing? But I don't know, is it my place? That's not even my country. Is it my place to even question them? I don't know. I mean, am I stepping out of my bounds and seeking out these answers? Because I sure as hell want to know. And why am I feeling this way? I have problems here at home. Why am I going overseas? That's a good question too. I want to be able to go anywhere and practice architecture. And part of that is developing allies who look like me. Architects from all over the world can come into my neighborhood and design. I want to be able to do the same thing. I want to be able to have that network of people that I can tag. Listen, if I get commissioned to do something in Toronto, I want to be able to tap Black engineers, designers, and local architects. And how do I do that? Now, you may question, well, it doesn't matter what race, is all about talent. Yeah, that's true, but the way the world works right now, I can do that. And because my counterparts who've been doing this for a long time, that's what they do. So why can I not do the same thing? And if it's the best, then it's the best. But diversity brings a whole different level to the table. So anyway, short and sweet, I start off this interview with, who are these two people? So I hope you enjoy. Who are you?
I'm Janelle,
and I'm Ethan.
We're both from Calgary, Alberta. I was born and raised, so
yeah. I was actually born in Mississauga, Ontario, so that's like outside of Toronto, and I moved to Calgary in 2007. But yeah, we both go to school in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
So Dalhousie School of Architecture. I just recently graduated in May.
Yeah.
And
I had to defer for a year because of COVID, but I will be rejoining in next summer to continue. And then I graduate the year after that.
So is it a 5-year, 4-year, 5, 4 plus something, or how does it work?
So it is, you have to do 2 years of any type of study, I guess. So we both studied planning and sustainability, like city planning first. And then after that, it's a 4-year program. So 2 years for the bachelor degree, and then you do 2 years of master's.
Oh, so 4 years.
Yeah, so 4 years altogether for architecture part. Yeah.
So after you graduate, how do you become registered?
So we have to intern for 3,000 hours, I'm pretty sure. And then after that, you take a series of exams. And if you pass those exams, then you become a registered architect.
How many exams?
I think it's about 4 exams, just on different topics of like theory or building technology, laws, regulations, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So 4 years of education, 3,000 hours, that's like 3 years or something like that? Or?
Yeah, that's about 3 years.
Okay. And so after 3 years, then there's 4 exams, all computerized, I assume.
Yeah. And I think there's one in person. I'm not completely sure. I'm pretty sure like most of them are like, like kind of like a SAT or some sort. And then one of them is in person. They like ask you questions and stuff. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you know how many Black Canadian architects are there?
That is a good question.
That's the problem that we have right now. Because at least in America, we know it's like 2% or something like that. They don't even release that information to us. So we have no idea.
We don't know actually, because the statistics are.
They don't release statistics like that here. Yeah. It's really hard to find.
Yeah.
I was looking up to see if I could just Google and find any Canadian Black architects. I found 2. Have you guys engaged in any? Do you have any role models or mentors that are Black Canadian architects?
For me personally, not at the moment.
We need to do more research into that, because we've mostly just been exposing people to like architects of color, not specifically in Canada. But we did recently do like a Canadian Indigenous architect. So yeah, but we are planning on like researching and looking more into that in the future. But right now, it's kind of like there aren't really that many role models for us, and if there are, our school doesn't make it known to us either. So
or it's very difficult to find too.
Yeah.
So, and when you first started your first year in college or university, how many minorities were in your class in comparison to who'd you graduate with, or in your last year?
Okay, so in my first year of architecture, I think there's 3 Black people, including myself, and there were about 5 people from like Middle East or Arab countries, 10 Chinese students, they all are transfer students from like China, somewhere in China. specifically, and I think that's about it. The rest are pretty much white. So
yeah, it was similar to me. Like as me and this other black guy from Haiti.
Yeah.
And like we were best friends, so
Yeah.
I mean we gotta stick together, but
right.
Yeah, so but like yeah, it's mostly like similar to what Janelle was saying, like around 10 Chinese students and a couple Middle Eastern students as well.
There's sorry, that's my dog. Our school actually does release statistics. They only accept like 10% international students, and there's 65 students each year accepted. So yeah, and that's predominantly like Asian people.
But the school fees are really high for international students. So
yeah,
that doesn't. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a barrier for some people. So, yeah.
Was there in-state tuition type thing, or in not state, but in I don't even know what?
So in Canada, it's just if you're from Canada, you pay the same tuition, and if you're from outside of Canada, you pay like a higher international tuition.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what area you're from.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which province.
Okay, all right. So it was like 65, let's say, and then it was like 2 to 3 Black folks. Then last year, who did you graduate with? Did you and Haitian man graduate together?
No, he took a year off. So unfortunately he didn't graduate with me. So I was like the only one, but he's planning on coming back next year. So it was good to hear that.
Yeah. But yeah, even like in the years before, there's only been about like 2 to 3 Black people in every year that I've known. So we're quite scarce. And the thing that bothers me about that is not only that, well, there should be more diversity in the program, but our school is located in an area that had one of the oldest Black populations in Canada. They have a whole like historic section dedicated to Black people. So you would expect for there to be more outreach to that community, since it's such a big part of the Nova Scotian identity. But there isn't. And I'm from outside of Nova Scotia, and I'm one of the only Black people in the program. So yeah.
How about the school itself? Is it diverse, or is it pretty much a representative of the department?
Well, we have a main campus, and then there's architecture, engineering.
Yeah.
But in the engineering part of our campus, there's more diversity there. But when you go to the architecture side, it's mostly white, and it's less diverse there.
And even even with our faculty, so it's called Faculty of Architecture and Planning. The planning faculty is incredibly diverse, and so are the people accepted into that program. But then we both studied planning earlier, but then as soon as you go into architecture, the entire faculty is white. All the other staff is white, and then like the majority of the students are white. So yeah.
Did you guys experience any culture shock there?
I don't think so. Yeah. We both kind of grew up in predominantly white areas, so I guess we're both used to it, which is kind of sad to say, but like it wasn't really any different from what we've experienced going to school our entire lives. It was more of a culture shock going into a place that was a lot more diverse because of what I was used to. So yeah.
And education-wise, how would you rate it? Because I know for me, they didn't really teach any diverse, for example, architectural history. That wasn't diverse at all. It was all European history. Did you guys experience that? And how'd you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same here. In our like architecture history courses, it would just be from a Eurocentric point of view, and we just learn about European history. And that's pretty much.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like there wasn't any sort of it was only last semester, like last May, that I learned about a Black architect in general. We had to do some sort of case study on different architects, and they assign you these buildings. And then they're like, yeah, you get this person called Francis Curie. I think that's how you say his name. But that was the first time I was introduced to a Black architect within the school over the course of 3 semesters. So I don't know, that kind of is telling.
Have you guys ever talked to the faculty or set up a club? Or I'm kind of curious, like, is there a club or?
Yeah, so there's actually a club called Equality in Architecture that kind of advocates for that, and they also do a bunch of events and showcase different documentaries about like environmental racism or women in architecture or people of color in architecture. But most recently, our school actually didn't release a statement in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I joined another group that was just advocating for like, why are you guys silent? Like, why aren't you guys saying anything? And then we also wrote a letter to the school, basically with about 8 calls to action as to like how they can help, essentially, or how they can be better and not be so Eurocentric. And one of the calls to action was actually teaching students about different cultures and the architecture of different places, so that aren't European. So
there's been a bit of a struggle for a while now, just connecting with the faculty on, incorporating more diversity into the curriculum and speaking out about racial issues. So it's been a constant like back and forth, but I don't think anything has really changed that much.
We only got one private email from one faculty member, and that was it. So there's nothing said publicly or anything like that. So yeah.
Have you guys experienced any systemic racism personally, or any?
Do you want to go?
You can go.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's just in the education system itself, or even just like the lack of resources for Black people versus the amount of resources white people would have, and the amount of money that it takes to go into architecture school here. I know some other architecture schools, they do provide you with certain things, but you have to buy everything here. I had a friend from the Bahamas who got into architecture, but she couldn't actually go in. Like, she couldn't go into that program because it was too expensive, and they expected her to get like a new $3,000 laptop plus like a whole architecture hand drafting set right off the bat, which is like, that's $4,000 outside of your tuition right away. It's just even that, not having generational wealth or not having access to wealth in those scholarships that can help you, or you plummet into like student loan debt. So there's kind of like there's not much leeway, and there's not much support for Black students. So, or I guess students of color in general, or for that matter. So yeah,
that's pretty much it.
I don't know.
That's pretty much all of it.
Yeah, sorry.
How'd you guys pick the school?
Well, before being able to go into architecture school, like, we had to do 2 years of any program. So they had this like city planning program there that I really liked. So that's what like attracted me to Dalhousie, and plus it was away from the city that I like grew up in. So I was like, I
need to get away from here type thing.
It was nice to like be independent and like go to a new city and everything. So and I was interested in city planning and design and that world. So,
that was pretty much it. He came here and he's like, oh my gosh, this program's super awesome, and I'm like, I guess I'll go there too. So.
Because I'm like a year ahead of Janelle, and like while I was there and she was still here, I was like, Calgary. Oh, this school is so awesome, like, you should come, and like
like showing views of the ocean and stuff. From like, our parents are from like the Caribbean, so I personally visited the Caribbean a lot, and I like miss the ocean so much. So it's also nice to kind of be close to it all the time.
Because Nova Scotia is an island, right, or a peninsula or something?
Yeah, it's a peninsula. So it's see the Atlantic, which is nice.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go there. I went to school in Boston, and I love the fact that the water was right there. You could take the train to the beach. I just that idea alone, like, just.
Yeah,
I mean, the water is not blue at all, but you
Yeah.
can't beat that. You can't beat that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I tried going in the water, but
It
didn't end well because it's like it's really cold. So
yeah.
Even during the summer.
Yeah, it's like because it's like the North Atlantic, so it's like it's really cold.
Yeah,
like,
it's about like maybe 2 or 3 degrees. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but like a couple.
It's cold. That's just cold. Yeah,
it's just cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like 20 degrees or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cold. Yeah, that's it. You have a job yet, or?
No, I've actually been trying to find a job recently, but it's just been really tough due to COVID. Because businesses, like I'd apply to firms, and then they would send a message back saying like, oh, we're not, like, we can't really hire right now, and so it's been tough. But yeah, I've just been looking for work right now.
Yeah.
So did you graduate this year, or was it last year?
It was this year. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how was the pandemic in school? Like, how was that for you two?
It was a bit of a shock because I remember I was in the studio and my friend was just like, oh, so they're thinking of shutting down the school, and I was like, what? That's crazy. How are they gonna do that? So it was just really weird. And then we couldn't go into the studio anymore, and then we had to work from home, which wasn't ideal. and then they just ended up postponing for a little bit. And
yeah.
it was just weird. Like,
he got out. I tried to do summer semester online. That did not work. I'm actually like hard of hearing, so if the video or audio freezes, I'm kind of lost. I can't hear anything, so I don't know what's going on. And that happened a lot because one of our professors was like on a farm with poor Wi-Fi. So yeah, that didn't really work. But it did really bug me that they take a portion of our tuition to pay for all these licenses like AutoCAD or Revit and like Rhino and all those programs, Adobe Suite. But then because we're not in school, we couldn't use the computers that had those programs on it, but we're still paying for them, and they still expect us to somehow make these beautiful renders, even though we probably can't afford to buy these licenses for those programs on our own. So that was just like an added stress. Like, there's advantages to having classes in person and having the resources that they give to you in one place where everyone has equal access to it. So yeah, that was another thing that made learning online with COVID pretty difficult.
So they're not doing anything at all that's different from online versus in studio? Are they at least lowering tuition of certain things, any administrative fees or the programs that you use? That's crazy.
They're not. The only thing that they took off of our tuition was our bus pass, because obviously no one's gonna be using the buses.
But that's in Canada. That's an issue with a lot of schools where they're charging you for the gym or recreational facilities, but they're not open and we can't use them. But they're still charging the students.
Yeah, I was paying at least $300 for tuition or for building maintenance fees. And I'm like, if no one's going to be in the building, then I shouldn't be paying this. Yeah, I would have expected the tuition to be a bit cheaper, especially for the upcoming fall when like most students are going back. But they actually decided to raise the tuition by 3%.
Wow.
For like Canadian students and like 11% for international students. So I don't know. It kind of felt like they're kicking us while we're down, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it is a bit unfair.
Is there on-campus housing, or you have to live off? Or was your choice to live off campus, or like how did that work?
Yeah, there's on-campus living, but it is cheaper usually to live off campus.
Yeah. So we lived in an apartment off campus. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You started this Instagram. What's next for it?
That's a good question. We've been bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are celebrities now. You need to.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice, like, because we've been able to meet so many like great people and kind of cultivate our own special, POC network.
Yeah,
So
and it's really cool to be able to share resources. I remember messaging people, hey, I really like the people that you used in your renders. I noticed they're not all white. Where'd you get these people?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it's a really great way to, I don't know, share resources and stuff like that. As for what's next, we were kind of thinking of maybe starting an actual website so that people without Instagram could like still go and see all our posts and maybe add more literature, other stuff, maybe start a database for cutouts to put in your renders and all that stuff, or of diverse people, I guess. So
yeah, I think for now we've mostly just been focusing on we're making a lot of resources more accessible to minorities, and yeah, that's pretty much what we've been talking about recently. Yeah.
Hey, you guys can make a business out of this. You can go on tour and go to all the other schools, because you're not the only ones. Has a lot of other Black Canadian students approached you guys at all, or?
I don't know if they're Canadian, but I actually don't know where they're from, like all over the world, basically.
Yeah, we've been contacted a lot by people.
Yeah, but it would be cool to just like go into schools and just
educate
and
people.
Just say like, here's some like great projects that you guys can study, and like, you know.
Yeah.
So like, because we didn't get that in our education, so
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason why we started this page is because really we don't see people of color, like architects or Black architects in general. We don't learn about them at all, but it seems to be pretty easy to find them and actually showcase them for other people to learn about them. So why isn't our school doing this?
I mean, it's not easy to find them, but we like.
I mean, you could put if you put the effort in.
Yeah.
You can find them and teach students about them. So that's basically the goal, because it is hard, like growing up and not seeing anyone doing what you want to do. So representation is very important.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to.
We want to make it easy for people to like, you know, have this database of amazing projects by people of color, like right there. So yeah.
Have you guys heard of the Royal Institute of Canada or something? Like it's the Architecture
Institute of Canada. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard of them before. Yeah.
I don't know. There hasn't been much like outreach from them. We were a part of like the Atlantic Association of Architects, though. So we have been in contact with that specific association. I do know that the former president of that is of the Royal Canadian. Can't remember the exact abbreviation for it.
It's the Royal Architecture Institute of Canada. I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
The president of that was a Black Canadian architect, which is nice to see. But
one of the two I found.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But see, he made sure he made himself known. Like he had a Wikipedia page and everything.
Yeah.
So he did make that effort. But that's kind of weird, though. At least for here, the American Institute of Architects, they have a student chapter. And I know with the school that I went to, they were involved, and there's another school I also went to, they were also involved. So I'm surprised that they didn't like go to your school or be in your school or.
Yeah, none of that really happened.
Yeah.
It's very much just architects, and then the students are kind of separate. So yeah, I'm finding that it's hard to like get in touch with all these other, like, I don't know, groups and organizations related to architecture. And I think that's part of the problem with why it's so hard to find statistics on like who's actually becoming licensed architects in Canada, because there's not really much outreach. So
oh, that's sad.
Yeah
That's really sad. I think that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions at all, or?
I guess what's the situation where you are, like
with life in general, like how am I feeling?
Yes, that too. What has architecture been in the US?
Like in the universities and
okay, let me see. From what you've told me, The network here is pretty strong. I've met some people who had the same problems that you've had. Like in me doing this podcast, like there's this one woman, she created, I'm doing a shout out to her. It's America's Hidden, and she went to the university. Oh shoot. She went to Florida. I'm sorry that I can't remember the school that you went to. But she went to Florida school, and she did her undergrad in engineering, and she loved it. Like she was part of the Black Association there and everything. There was a lot of Black and brown and people there. And then she got her master's, same university, for architecture, and she was like the only one.
Yeah.
The only one. And she didn't see any Black architects. And so when she graduated, she made it a point to seek out Black architects, and she created this program. She even had a summit. It's amazing, like what she did. And even though like I'm heavily entrenched in like any Black related thing, I've always had Black mentors. And that was only because I live in a city where there's a lot of Black people and a lot of successful Black people, including in architecture. But I feel like I'm an anomaly. So when I hear stories like you, I'm like, what? I can't believe you would, what? And she was one out of like, I mean, imagine like, I mean, it was like 65 people and it was like 2 and 3.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's crazy. Yeah. And especially you're in an area where there's a Black population. Like you said, you question, is there any outreach at all? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So you're not alone in that. And if you had went to McGill, would you have the same experience than
No.
if you went to Halifax? So McGill is in Montreal. So, or on the other side in Vancouver, would you have had the same experience, or Toronto, or any other places? I don't know. But I guess the point is that no matter where you go, you should always have representation. And if you are the only one, at the very least, you show, hey, we're not only white, we're everything else. And, Africa is not just Egypt. Another thing too, is the same thing here, where you're only taught European architecture. And when I talk to a group Black in architecture, and they're all in London, and they're having the same problems as you having the same problems. Like they're international students, the cost is high, them being able to stay, the visas, it's a struggle, and it's international, and it's a global problem. And luckily this pandemic showed how much systemic it is. So kudos to you guys, and try to make money, because this could be your career until you get jobs. Free t-shirts, I don't know, like you could really
I actually brought up that idea like a few weeks ago. I'm like, we should.
I'm serious. I mean, you guys could really, just the business sense of it, right? You're putting all this effort and all this work. You should really monetize this. At the least, let it pay for your internet. Because Adobe is expensive. Those suites are not cheap. Even in Canadian dollars, it's
more expensive here.
I mean, and that's another thing that architecture doesn't teach you, is the business side. It's all about design and looking pretty, and it doesn't teach you about business. So like, I really, like, I will, listen, if you have something, I will buy it from you, okay? Like, if you have a product, I will buy it. You'll see that invoice said Melissa Daniel. I will pay the international rate, okay? Like,
that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind.
Oh, you guys have been great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And when this pandemic is over, I will definitely tag you guys, and when I go to Halifax, and hopefully you're still there. I don't know, you'll be superstars. You may move to, I don't know, whatever.
Toronto's like the place.
Toronto.
Better than New York, so
you guys will live in Toronto and have like, live in that high fancy condo at that place, and
end goal is to own our own firm, like Black owned firm. That's
right. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's the end goal. So
I will definitely visit your fancy swanky office.
yeah.
Knocking on your door. Remember me?
Oh yeah.
I talked to you when you were nobody. Now
Some measly 1,000 followers, you know.
2.5 million.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
You're like, I designed Drake's home and
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You guys been great. Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah,
No
thanks for
problem.
getting in contact with us. And
No problem.
Yeah,
Hope to
it's
talk.
been fun, you know.
Yeah, it has been. Okay. All right, guys.
Bye.
Goodbye. Hey, listeners. I have an exciting announcement. I decided to launch a membership program for the show, where you have a chance to support me and the show directly. I love creating the show, and it means the world to me that you all tune in to keep hearing me week after week. But it takes an immense amount of time and energy to produce. I want to keep the show going, and I want to invest in its growth. And I also want you to become a partner with me in this journey. That's why I'm excited to give you a chance to officially become a supporter of the show at glow.fm/archispolly, ARCHISPOLLY, or by clicking the link in the show notes. It's quick and easy. It takes less than 30 seconds and just takes clicking a link in the show notes and using Apple or Google Pay. You don't have to create any new logins, and you can contribute as much or as little as you like. If this show is part of your day or week, and you like what I'm doing, then visit glow.fm/archispolly, all one word, and support me and the show in any way you can today.